This time last year, I sat down with Governor Gavin Newsom in a place you probably wouldn't expect to see the governor of California. We met up in Montgomery, Alabama, where he was sounding the alarm about the Republican rollback of reproductive rights and individual liberties in general. Of course, since then, things have only gotten worse. Recently, a near-total abortion ban from 1864 was reinstated in Arizona. And in Alabama, the site of that conversation with the governor just a year ago, hospitals were forced to pause IVF treatment. And while that IVF decision has received a lot of warranted attention, the fact that lawmakers there have even tried to make it a crime to facilitate out-of-state abortions has probably not received as much focus as it deserves. And Governor Newsom is still at it. Today, he's releasing a searing new ad that will air in Alabama as part of an effort to raise awareness about that extreme legislation. Now, in a big exclusive on this show, we're debuting that ad for the very first time. And I'll warn you, it's disturbing, but it's also important to watch.
We're almost there. You're gonna make it.
Trump Republicans want to criminalize young Alabama women who travel for reproductive care.
Miss, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle, take a pregnancy test.
Stop them by taking action at righttotravel.org. Campaign for Democracy Group is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Joining me now from a Planned Parenthood clinic in Sacramento is California Governor Gavin Newsom. Governor, I so appreciate you taking the time. And I just wanted to start with this ad that I've watched many times. It's incredibly chilling. It just debuted. It's going to air in Alabama. And for people who are out there who just watch that and they think, that's an exaggeration, this isn't really going to happen, what do you say to them?
Well, I'd say to them, look at what Idaho already did. I mean, thank God it's been enjoined by the federal courts under First and Fourth Amendment grounds. But it's a law that's in effect in Idaho. It's a law that is being advanced not just in Alabama, but Tennessee and Oklahoma as we speak. So much attention has been focused elsewhere. IVF, understandably, obviously focused tactically on what just occurred in Arizona as it relates to the 1864 law. Not enough attention has been placed on the fact that we're not just criminalizing women's access to reproductive care in certain states. Now we're criminalizing their travel.
Which is so important for people to understand. People who are in states around California, like Arizona, who want to come to California, they're looking, this is a threat that people need to take seriously. I did want to talk about Arizona because for the second time in 2 weeks, Republicans in Arizona, even after they saw all of the response, blocked an effort to repeal the abortion ban based on a law, again, back in, that was passed in 1864. This time, there was video, which is pretty remarkable, of Republicans actually cheering on the floor of the legislature. I mean, what was going through your mind when you watched that video?
It sickens you. I mean, I've got two young daughters. You know, the fact that they're not going to have the same rights that their mom and dad did, the same rights their parents have. I mean, the fact that we have in this country, and it goes back to the travel point, 160,000 women that had to leave their state, 160,000 women had to leave their states last year to access reproductive care. The fact that now you have AGs like the Alabama AG that want to incarcerate up to 5 years to life those women that are aided and abetted, not just the women, but those that support the women to get out of their respective states. The fact that we now have a ban goes back to 1864 in the state of Arizona, and they're celebrating 1864. I thought the Republican Party wanted to put a wrecking ball to the 21st century. Now they want to recreate the 19th century. So for me, it's chilling and goes well beyond just the issue of women's reproductive care. It goes to access to contraceptions, voting rights, civil rights, LGBTQ rights, this consequential moment that should absorb most of our focus, not some of the other tangential things that tend to get a little more focus at this precious and important moment in American history.
Which is a really important point I think people forget. And when you and I sat down in Alabama about a year ago, you kind of warned of this, that it could be, they could be going after LGBTQ rights. That could be next. Contraception could be next. What is next? What should people be bracing themselves for if these politics continue to run as they are?
Well, you see, they've been on a cultural purge, a banning binge. They're censoring historical facts, rewriting history. It's happened in the open. they're not just talking about rights regression in states. They're talking about the nationalization of rights being regressed. We know, you know, everybody watching knows that if Donald Trump becomes president of the United States again, he will sign a national abortion ban, period, full stop. He's the one that's responsible for the conditions that persist today. And those same conditions, again, continue to persist as it relates to rights that are being vandalized by the United States Supreme Court.
You mentioned Donald Trump, and what you said, I mean, it stuck out to me because he said he wouldn't sign an abortion ban. He leans into it should be up to the states, which is, by the way, leaving millions of women across the country without access to abortion. But it sounds like you don't believe him on his claim he won't sign an abortion ban.
No, he's a liar. He's a liar. He's not telling you the truth. He's not level setting. He'll say whatever he needs to say on any day of the week. I mean, give me a break. Look, I mean, he's created these conditions. He celebrated those conditions. He celebrated the fact that he was responsible for overturning Roe. He said that he would criminalize women. I mean, he's on tape saying these things. He'll say whatever he needs to say at a given moment. And so don't think for a second if, you know, the great Lindsey Graham sends him a bill and somehow it gets through Congress, that he doesn't sign that. You know he will. And everybody, again, knows that. You can't trust this person by any stretch of the imagination. And so, look, these conditions that persist all are made possible by one person, Donald Trump. Mitch McConnell, you have a lot to explain as well. And so that's why we have to, I think, again, be more clear, more concise in the condemnation and remind people of what's at stake with this election. And again, I recognize what's at stake because we're already feeling it. We're already dealing with the absorption of people seeking reproductive care in the state of California. It's up by 17% post-Dobbs in this state. And I'm here at Planned Parenthood. It's important, Jen, just to remind people about a third of Planned Parenthood patients in America are here in the state of California. So no state has more responsibility, more opportunity, but bigger burden than the state of California.
I want to ask you about the Arizona Senate race because, you know, another person who's kind of attempting to change, soften, shift, chameleon, whatever you want to call it, their stance is one of Arizona's more well-known Republicans, Senate candidate Carrie Lake. I mean, she initially praised the state's abortion measure from 1864 as a great law, but now she says the state Supreme Court decision to revive it is out of step with the people of her state. She's been joking about people putting on Glocks. That's a separate but related issue. What do you make of her evolving stance on this?
A person of remarkable character and conviction with, compelling moral authority. That puts her finger to the wind and moves with the prevailing winds, please. Her integrity has the form and substance, dare I say, you see the Golden Gate Bridge behind me, of fog. I don't take much of what she says at face value. I mean, she basically said last week that people, well, don't worry about any 1864 bans in Arizona. You can all go to California. You can all go to a neighboring state. We took that quite literally and quite seriously, but she can't be taken quite literally or respectively quite seriously.
Let me come back to Andrew. I mean, there's been reporting from the New York Times this morning that David Pecker is expected to be the first witness. Lisa Rubin, our colleague, predicted that and kind of outlined why that would be the case. But there's also been ongoing reporting and speculation about Trump testifying. I mean, that seems like a disaster as a non-lawyer to me. But explain to us kind of what the prosecution may be thinking in that case, if it's just Trump wanting to do it himself, what the impact could be if he decided to testify and they decided to have him do that.
Well, first, everyone should know that a defendant like Trump does not have to testify. He has no burden whatsoever, and the jury will be told that, and they cannot use the fact that he chooses not to testify in any way against him. That's true of any defendant, and so it's true for Donald Trump as well. He, though, has the right to testify, regardless of what his lawyers may strongly advise him. I am confident that lawyers like Susan Necheles are going to throw their bodies in front of the witness stand trying to get him not to take the stand. And if you are the prosecutors, you are just licking your chops thinking, fine, you want to take the stand? Great. The amount of cross-examination material, Jen, as you know from having watched him and covered him, is, thousands and thousands and thousands of prior inconsistent statements. That's a polite way of saying lie.
Yeah.
Their prior bad acts. So his taking the stand would really be a death knell, I think, to the case. But he is unpredictable and has a lot of hubris. Just look at the E. Jean Carroll case, where he, by all accounts, decided after the first trial that he could do it better than his lawyers, and the judgment went from $5 million to $85 million. So if he proceeds in that sort of mode, I don't think he's going to be helping himself.
Yeah, I mean, some of the reporting has suggested, probably won't surprise either of you, that prosecutors want to cross-examine him about recent lawsuits he's lost, like the E. Jean Carroll case about attacks he's made on women, which certainly, if you're in the jury, that's a lot of context to understand. So let me ask you, Neil, tomorrow everybody convenes at 9:30, opening statements we expect, maybe some time to hear from a witness. They are breaking at 2 o'clock because of Passover. What are you watching for tomorrow?
Well, the first thing I'm watching for is the judge's rulings on what's called the Sandoval hearing. That basically is the judge going to say, here's what I'm going to allow the prosecutors to talk to Donald Trump about should he testify. Do they talk about Jean Carroll? Do they talk about all these other women, all these other lies, the things that Andrew was referring to? And it's for that reason, among so many others, I think there's no chance that Donald Trump is going to testify. I mean, if his legal team had an unofficial mascot, it'd be a chicken. And there's no chance that I think, reality of Earth that he's going to. So that's the first thing I'm watching for. And then I'm going to watch for Pecker and how the prosecution introduces him and tells that story, because it's a remarkable story that, has been chalked up to, it's about Stormy Daniels stuff. No, Trump is basically capturing part of the media, the part that he's most worried about, and paying them off for their silence. That is a remarkable thing. It interfered with the 2016 election in a massive way, and that's the story we'll hear tomorrow.
We're all innocent until we're proven guilty. It's not fair that we have a system that relies on you having enough money to pay your way into freedom. I've been involved in this movement to end mass incarceration in the country for about a decade now. The work all of us did to make sure pretrial freedom was extended to more and more people, it actually paid off in improving real human beings' lives, their families' lives, and made all of our communities safer. Hello. Hello. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. We want to talk about what freedom feels like. We want to talk about what it means to be home with our loved ones. We want to talk about pretrial freedom, about bail reform, but personalize it.
Say good morning. Good morning. Pretrial freedom to me is me being able to not miss a beat on my children. Me missing time with them is very detrimental, and they really need me.
Between being able to care for my dad, being able to make sure the bills were paid, for me to be able to strategize with my lawyer. You can't do that behind bars.
The most important thing in my life right now is change. I'm just working towards getting my certifications in forklift driving, and I'm doing pretty good. I've been sober for about a year.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
I've been affected by having relatives and friends in jail and in prison. My mother was incarcerated for a time. So many people are doing these things out of trauma, out of pain, out of desperation, out of poverty. Everybody's got a story like that. And so we have to decide whether we want to inflict more harm and more punishment on those people, or if we want to try to help them heal and grow.
Language is so important to changing minds. How we do that is by continuing to have this conversation using language of love, language of freedom, and language of liberation.
Every time I've been incarcerated, I come out much worse than I've ever been in. But if you're healed and you can help the next person heal, your community is going to be that much safer. Healed people healed people.
And everybody who's worried about safety, those investments in freedom actually are what's going to make us safer. Investing in freedom, investing in human flourishing is what's going to make us more safe.
The world of true freedom is these conversations, whether it's in a very small town, a big town, whether it's a beautiful table or whether it's a card table, pulling people together and allowing them to listen to each other. That's freedom.
Joining me now is John Legend. Thank you so much for taking the time on your trip to New York to sit down with me.
My pleasure, Jen. It's great to see you and great to speak with you about this.
So first, I just want to start, this is pretty personal to you. I mean, all of the work you've done on criminal justice reform, really informing the public, storytelling. Tell me a little bit more about your personal connection and why you got involved in this work.
Well, growing up in Springfield, Ohio, I had many family members that interacted with the criminal justice system. Some of them were in prisons, some of them were in jail. My own mother had spent time in jail. And so when we talk about pretrial freedom, when we talk about reforming the way we think about punishment in our criminal legal system, it really does hit home.
You've been working on this for years now. You're not new to this issue. Why is there such a disconnect out there about this issue?
Well, the reason why we care so much about pretrial freedom is because our jails end up housing so many people, and they're not set up to make people's lives better. And what ends up happening is people who are innocent until they're proven guilty. So in our system, everybody knows that. You watch Law and Order, you watch the life and times of Donald Trump, every trial that he's a part of, you notice he's not spending time in jail before he goes to trial. He's innocent until he's proven guilty. And we all know that. But what happens with folks who can't afford bail is they have to languish in jail until their case. I think what ends up happening is we get kind of ruled by the anecdote. You know, the New York Post will run a story, or Fox News will run a story, or the local news will run a story, and they'll say this one person got out of jail on bail, and they did this crime. But the actual numbers, the actual data is resoundingly clear that folks that benefit from pretrial freedom don't go out and commit more crimes.
We just showed a clip of part of the gathering. You hosted at your own home.
We hosted at our house. We worked with a group called Zealous that kind of gathered these folks from all around the country. And we had a gathering at my house. And we wanted to really humanize the really positive effects of pretrial freedom and make sure people really understood the stories that were attached to that, and the lives that were attached to that, and the families that were attached to that. And so we had people come to my house and we talked about it.
One of the things that you hear from Trump's supporters is that he signed the First Step Act in 2018. He's a partner in this effort. What do you say to people who say, "Oh no, he would be an ally. Look what he did in 2018."
He's not been an ally. I mean, I think the First Step Act was fine. It was a very kind of small reform, and to be honest, most of the reform we need is on the local and state level, because most incarceration is local and state, and most of the laws that end up being criminally enforced are local and state laws. That being said, at the same time, you know, he's claiming credit for those small things. He's also saying, you know, if people are stealing something, they should get shot in the middle of the store. When we protested the killing of George Floyd, he was advocating for the military to shoot us in the streets. He's made it clear throughout his life that he believes black people are inferior. Like, he believes that to his core, in his bones. He wouldn't let us live in his buildings back in the day. But also, when you hear some of the stray comments he makes, he clearly believes in a genetic hierarchy of humanity, and is racially determined. So he is a tried and true, like, dyed-in-the-wool racist. Like, in the core of his being, he's a racist. So I don't want to hear what he has to say about what he's done for black people. He's done very little for us, and he is at his core truly a racist. And you even hear what he says about immigration and which countries he wants people to come in from. They all are very white.
That is true. That's something pretty universal about them. So I knew you were active on the campaign trail in 2020. You have a lot on your plate. Are you going to be out there campaigning for Joe Biden this fall?
Yeah, we'll get out there probably later in the year as it gets close to people making decisions about when it's time to vote. I think the choice is very clear. there's a lot been said about age and all these other things. Both of them are old, but one of them is a really decent man who's done a lot to improve lives in this country, and that's Joe Biden. That's who I'm going to be voting for, and I'll be out there supporting him.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.